Hello! It's that time of year. It's fall. It's finally fall. I can feel it. I walk outside and it just has that kind of crispness to it that's only unique to the fall. This is my favorite time to read of the year because it's a little chilly, a little brisk. Maybe you bring your book to a bookstore or a coffee shop and you just sit and I'm wearing my finest attire today for this special video. This is my fall TBR video. I made a yearly TBR video and I haven't made one for any other season or any other month because really it's kind of pointless for me to make a TBR video. I'm very much a mood reader. I literally will just walk to my shelves and just go like, and then I'll read that one. I'm not someone who plans that much ahead in terms of what I want to read. So there's a huge disclaimer on this video that these are books that I want to read for fall, but this could change at any time. Like, don't hold me to these books. It's very possible you're going to be like, I thought you said you were going to read that, and I'm going to be like, no. However, these are books that I just have a feeling I'm going to get to or I want to get to, and that I think would just be very good and atmospheric for fall. That being said, a little disclaimer as well. These are books that I think feel like fall, but you could be like, that doesn't make any sense. These don't feel like fall. I don't know what to tell you. These are just books that for me just give that kind of like so these are books I'm looking to get to. It's a good amount. I average about 4 books per month. That's usually where I'm at. So if there's about 3 months of fall, like if we're looking at September, October, November, and maybe kind of counting December, I have 14 books. So that's a little ambitious for me. However, it's possible. Anything's possible. Anything is possible if you just believe. Let's get started. I have so many books to talk about. Thumbnail. I hate taking a thumbnail photo. It's my least favorite YouTube thing ever. I don't know why I get so stressed out about the thumbnail, but I make these little like corny poses and I'm like, I gotta choose one of these. I hate this. But anyway, for some reason, and I don't know why, but for me, fantasy feels very spring, summery, but sci-fi feels very fall to me. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that, but that's just how my brain works. And so I haven't read a sci-fi in some time. I would kind of count Parable of the Sower, which I read way back in February, to be sci-fi. It's definitely dystopian. But I was like, I haven't read like a classic sci-fi, like true sci-fi in a long time. And I've been wanting to pick up for a long time The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is like a very famous sci-fi, very classic. Shivek, a brilliant physicist, decides to take action. He will seek answers, question the unquestionable, and attempt to tear down the walls of hatred that have isolated his planet of anarchists from the rest of the civilized universe. To do this dangerous task will mean giving up his family and possibly his life. Shivek must make the unprecedented journey to the utopian mother planet, Eurus, to challenge the complex structures of life and living and ignite the fires of change. That sounds cool. Also, I love this cover. It's kind of pulpy looking, but the colors together are gorgeous. The Dispossessed, Ursula K. Le Guin. Again, sci-fi to me is very autumnal, and I just feel like this will be fun, kind of a quick read, world building, very cool stuff. So, cool. Next is a 19th century classic. I've been wanting to read this for so long. Every time I went to the used bookstore or the thrift store, I was looking for this book. I could never find it because it's kind of a weird one. And then when I was at the Newberry Library book sale, I was like, there it is! Cousin Bette by Balzac. This is supposed to be about a kind of rich family, and they take in their poor relation, their cousin Bette, who doesn't have as much money, and she slowly kind of destroys the family, like from the inside out. And I love stories like that. I love a family drama, and I love when someone is like unhappy or bitter or just wants to like take people down and maybe a little obsessive and destroys everything. Like I love those kind of stories. And so I have a feeling this will be like that. This isn't a creepy book by any means, or why it gives me fall vibes, I don't know, but I just feel like it's time. It's time for me to read this book. French classic. I am excited to see what that means, because I know that that is the main premise, that she tears apart this family. But I want to know how she does it, and I think it's going to be very interesting. Cousin Bette. Slay girl. Next is one that was on my yearly TBR, and I didn't include a lot of those books on my yearly TBR just because it feels kind of redundant because I've already made a video about it, which you should go watch if you haven't watched it. So it felt redundant, but this is one that I'm like, no, I have to read this one, and this video is going to hold me accountable by bringing it up again. It's The Stand by Stephen King. This is classic dystopian novel, classic apocalyptic type novel. There's a plague that kind of wipes out a lot of humanity, and what's left are these varying factions throughout the United States, vying for power and for authority in the wastelands. Classic. Definitely one that I was like going to read around 2019. Then I was like, I'll read it in 2020, and then I went, no, I can't do that. So now we want to read it now. However, this is a thick mama book, 1,100 pages. Because I'm reading a big book right now, I just want to finish that book and then I'll pick this one up. But I figured this was a good fall one. I don't know why. It's Stephen King, but it's not horror Stephen King, so it's not like it's gonna be scary. But I like reading Stephen King around the fall. I just think he's good for that. Any book that he writes is kind of good for the fall environment. And I read one Stephen King per year to not oversaturate my market, not to oversaturate my reading. I dedicate one Stephen King a year. So this would be my yearly Stephen King read. If I don't get to this one and I don't do the yearly Stephen King read, I don't know. I don't know what to do there, but this is the one and I want to get to this one. I've been wanting to read this one for a very, very long time. So also, I'm gonna have to like put something, like a post-it on his face or something. I don't want him staring at me from my bedside table. Next are two books written by Native Americans. In November, I usually like to read at least one, maybe two, or as many, really, as I want. Books written either about Native Americans or by Native Americans, because it is Native American Heritage Month in November. Fun fact. So I have two books, one of which is The Beadworkers by Beth Piatote. These are short stories by Beth Piatote, who is a Native writer. I believe she is Nez Perce. Do they pronounce it Nez Perce? Or in French it'd be Nez Perce. Whichever one it is. Nez Perce, I'm going to say. She's a Nez Perce writer, and these are short stories, just about different Native people. So I've been wanting to read this for a while. I picked this up in Santa Fe when I was there for a wedding. It just felt like the right book to pick up, even though the Nez Perce Indians are not from Santa Fe. I still thought that this would be a good one to pick up. And I've just heard good things about it. I've heard minimal things about it. It's not like this is like a very popular one, but it just seems like a good one. And it's good for fall. Good for Native American Heritage Month. So, The Beadworkers. The next is like a very classic Native book written by a Native author. It's Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko. I found this really nice copy. This is like a Penguin Classics Deluxe edition I found in a little free library, which was great. Set in the insular world of the Laguna Pueblo Reservation, but resonating far beyond, Leslie Marmon Silko's novel tells the story of Teo, an Army veteran of mixed ancestry who returns to the reservation, scarred by his experience as a prisoner of the Japanese. Only by immersing himself in the Indian past and its traditions can he begin to regain the peace that was taken from him. Masterfully written, filled with the somber majesty of Pueblo myth, Ceremony is a work of enduring power. I just think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. And I can't remember the last time I've read anything about specifically Pueblo Indians. So this is going to be in the Southwest, which is a region, after going to that wedding, I'm like, this place is awesome. I'll read more about it. So I'm really excited to read this. This has been on my list for years at this point, like a really, really long time. And I was always looking for it, never could quite find it, and then it just came to me in my little free library. And I just think this would be a good one for fall. Okay, this book, I don't know what's going on. Well, I don't know what little demon is incepting my mind. I don't know what's going on, but basically I like can't stop thinking about this book. Like I literally keep going, I need to read that book, or like something about this book is like making me really want to read it. It's Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow. I have a thing where I love reading books that are the basis for musicals. They're always great. I've read Les Mis, I've read Funhouse, I read The Phantom of the Opera. Like I've read so many books at this point that became beloved musicals, and musicals that I also really love. And Ragtime would fall into that category. Although I'd say I know the Ragtime musical, but I don't like adore it and love it. I have a friend who really loves this musical and like is all about the ragtime. There's one song in there that I really love. I don't know this musical as well as other books of musicals that I've read. For instance, Les Mis. Lived, breathed that musical, and also lived, breathed that book. But I know this musical, the music is great, and just the story is fascinating. So this basically just follows three families kind of at the turn of the century in New York. So it's right around like Ellis Island, big mass of immigration in the industrial age. It's that time period. But woven in with these three families are real historical figures who play as characters, essentially. which is happening right now in War and Peace. Like, there's actual real historical characters who are treated as characters, and I think that it's so interesting because it's weaving this fact and fiction and making you see, oh, well, this is what people would have been like during this time, or this is what these people maybe were like as people, as real human beings, and not just stiff figures in a history book. So I really like that, and maybe that's why, because I'm reading War and Peace, that's what keeps bringing me to this book. I'm like, oh, I can get more of that. I can get more of that from here, because this book specifically features Henry Ford, Emma Goldman, Harry Houdini, J.P. Morgan, Theodore Dreiser, Sigmund Freud, Emiliano Zapata, and I know it also features, shoot, what was her name? Actress, whose husband killed a guy. Shoot, what was her name? Ah, yes. It has Evelyn Nesbit, who has a Wikipedia page I go back to all the time. Like, I read about Evelyn Nesbit all the time because her life kind of fascinates me. She's a character in this. Any who's who of New York at the turn of the century is in this book and gets, like, somehow weaves in with these three families that are fictional. I don't know much about the book itself other than that, but I just feel like it's time. Like, I just feel like this might be a good fall book, kind of autumnal. I love New York in the fall, so maybe that's what's giving it to me. I don't know, but this just feels like a fall book, and it feels like it's time I read ragtime. I don't know. Don't try to find any rhyme or reason in these. Some of these will make sense to you that they're fall, and some I'm like, I don't know where I pulled that from. This next one feels very fall to me. Very, very fall. It's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Other Stories by Washington Irving. I've never read any Washington Irving stories, never had to read them for school, never ever had to read them ever, but I got this collection from a used bookstore years ago, and it's just been kind of hanging out. She's been kind of sitting and hanging out, and I just feel like fall is the perfect time. I know The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. That is obviously the very famous story with Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, which is depicted on the cover. I loved growing up the animated Ichabod and Mr. Toad, so it was a story of Wind in the Willows, and then it did Sleepy Hollow. The Disney animated with Bing Crosby. I loved that movie. We had it on VHS, watched it all the time, and the Ichabod story always kind of creeped me out, but I also loved it. And so I've always wanted to read the original story, and just read the other stories, like other Washington Irving stories. I just think that this puts it in a nice little compact volume. It's about like 350 pages. I don't know. I just think it's time. It's time to read some Washington Irving. Fun fact, these were kind of like the first stories that when they reached Europe was like, oh, Americans can write. Like, these were the first stories that kind of impressed a European audience, which I think is very interesting, because these were written way at the end of the 18th century. So, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Headless Horseman, let's go. This book I featured on my First Lines of TBR video. I'm kind of just cranking through those books because that list just had books that I was like, no, I really want to get to them. So I've just been like one after the other getting them out. Like Days of Abandonment, Normal People, this one coming out, A Death in the Family I'm reading right now. Like, I'm just going through that list. And this to me really just does feel autumnal. Maybe it's the cover, maybe it's the content, I don't know, but it's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This has been on my list for a very long time. My brother got me this book, and I still haven't read it. He knows. But this is basically about the son of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is not named as a character in this book, but it's pretty heavily alluded to that it is him, but this is about his family, and specifically about his young son, named Hamnet. And this is supposed to be beautiful. Like, the writing is supposed to be beautiful, people get attached to the characters, it's supposed to be very beautiful. And so I really want to get to it. I really want to read it. I think it's finally time. And I don't know, like, nice, beautiful, rich language in the fall. It just feels right. Like, it feels like something I'm supposed to do. So, is this a seasonal book? Maybe not, but it feels very autumnal to me. So, we're gonna do Hamnet. Now, I realized as I was making this list, I don't really have a ton of nonfiction. I just feel like fiction is just like what I want to get into in the fall, but I like to spice it up, and I want to add at least one nonfiction in. And one that felt, for some reason, appropriate is The Great Mortality by John Kelly. Cozy, it's about the plague, which, it's funny, The Stand also features a plague. I really am into plague literature. This isn't technically literature. This is a book about the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages. If you listen to the last podcast on the left, which is one of my favorites, I've listened to it for years, dedicated fan, hail yourselves, and they featured this book and used it heavily for their research on their series on the bubonic plague. And Marcus, who does like a lot of the research for them, spoke very highly of this book. So I've had this for a long time, I just haven't gotten to it. But I just feel like something about cutesy sweaters and pumpkins and apple cider makes me think I want to read all about the bubonic plague. Because what, you're going to read about that in the summer? No, you want to read when it's a little bit colder, because the thought of what this is will be a little bit gross. I like how compact it is. I feel like how much evidence do they really have about this? But it is like a crisp 300 pages about the plague. And when it comes to nonfiction, love that. Love when it's just like, we're going to delve in for a little bit, we're going to give you the facts, and then you're on your way. So I'm really, really excited to read this. I know I'm definitely going to get to this. Maybe not until October. But this could be like kind of spooky, like a spooky nonfiction. Next is one that I feel is kind of cozy, and is also one that's really short and I can kind of just squeeze her in. But it's one I've been very interested in getting to. It's A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is also sci-fi, and kind of like cozy sci-fi. The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin I don't think is as cozy, but this one has been described as cozy. This is basically a world in which there were robots built, very intelligent robots, and the robots one day just are like, we don't want to do this anymore. And they kind of just take off into the woods and go, and they kind of disappear. And so it's kind of rumored, like, are these robots still around? Like, where are they? And I believe this one character, like, kind of finds one, or finds a couple in the wild. I'm very interested in that, especially with all these conversations about AI and where it's going. I just think that's very interesting. It's supposed to be just, like, a very, like, peaceful book. So I know I'll want to read this, especially when, like, the leaves are really starting to change. The cover especially is just like really speaking to me for fall. And again, I know I'm going to want to just squeeze this in when I'm like, oh, we're getting to the end and I need to get a short book in. This is going to help. But I'm very excited to get to this nonetheless. It's A Song for the Wild Built. Now, I'm totally going to take back what I said earlier, that fantasy is more for the spring, summer, and then sci-fi is for the fall. This book is fantasy, but I just feel like this one is for the fall. And I read the first one in the spring, and so I'm ready to continue the series. It is The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien. I read Fellowship of the Ring in the spring. That was great for the spring. It was perfect. It's like it's starting to get warm, and it just felt right. Like, and that book itself felt so like a warm hug. So like warm and cozy and friendship and little treks. Sorry, a friend just texted asking if we could do another spooky sleepover this year, and it makes me go, because last year we got together and made some spooky snacks and watched spooky movies and literally slept over a friend's house, and it was so fun. So we're doing it again. For some reason, I don't know what it is, like it makes sense that Fellowship of the Ring was spring summer, but for some reason Two Towers feels very autumnal to me. It's something about Two Towers, it's like it's fall time. And then I'll read maybe The Return of the King in like winter. And for some reason that timeline makes sense to me, and I don't know why. Don't ask. But something about what I can remember of the plot of Two Towers feels like fall to me, baby. All those treks with Frodo and Sam and Gollum for a long time. That screams fall to me. So I really want to get going on this again. I was tempted to pick this right up when I finished Fellowship of the Ring, but I was like, no, I've got other stuff, and I want to read all these other things that are a little bit more appropriate for the spring summer, and so I left it. But now I'm ready to get back into it. I want to keep reading it. I don't need to finish this in a year. That's not a goal of mine, so I can read Return of the King whenever. But I just feel like fall. It's time to get back to it. I'm ready to go to The Two Towers. Next is actually a book I've had for a very long time, and it's one that I haven't heard that much about. Like, I don't know, do people like this book? Like, where is this book in people's minds? Because I remember when this came out, and then I don't really remember anything else related to this book. It's Out of Darkness, Shining Light by Bettina Kappa. This is a book specifically about the people who are tasked in taking Dr. Livingstone's body. So Dr. Livingstone was like a famous doctor / explorer who died in Africa, and his body needs to be returned home to England. And so it's about this expedition to take his body from Africa to England. I believe it's like, it's based on true facts. I don't know if it's the same people. I know that his body was transported back to England. But this is, I think, like a fictionalized account of the people tasked with that task. And I just think I think that's fascinating. I think that's really interesting. This book was published in 2019 and I got it in 2019 and it's been sitting on my shelves ever since, just looking at me. But for some reason, something in my mind keeps going like, you want to read that book, go to her, go to her. And for some reason, it just feels very, very fall to me. Something about the horrors of the colonization of Africa are calling to me for the fall. So I'm really interested in reading this. I can't say this is like super high up on the priority list. I haven't ranked any of these in terms of priority, but she's been calling to me, so that means it's gonna happen soon. I swear, I have these, it's almost like these like visions. Like I get these like, the image of the book in the shelf is just going like ding, 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 and I'm like, okay, fine, we'll get to you, we'll do it. And I always then read it. Like, that's always how I pick the books. So, yeah, we'll see. Out of Darkness, Shining Light. The next two are very spooky. These are spooky, spooky books. And I considered making a whole separate video dedicated to spooky books I want to read. However, there are so many spooky books and there is so little time that I'm like, again, I'm probably not going to get to all of these. And as someone who likes to engage in spooky all year round, I will get to them later in the year, but I don't have that much time. I average about 4 books per month, so it's not like we can really get to all of them. However, I did want to pick 2 very specifically spooky books because these are just, it's been gelling and I've just been wanting to get to them. One of which is Uncle Silas by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. I've talked about J. Sheridan Le Fanu on this channel before. I considered picking up Carmilla. I picked up a really great edition of it at Exile in Bookville in Chicago, and I love the edition of it, and I do really want to get to that. However, this has been on my shelf longer, so I feel a little obligated to read this one, and I've just always been very curious about this book. It seems creepy. It's supposed to be creepy. Obviously, if he's written a vampire story, this is a guy who's known to write like very creepy stories. Uncle Silas is about this man and his daughter, and they kind of live by themselves. And then they're paid a visit by Uncle Silas. And Uncle Silas, something's up with this man. Like, something is not right with Uncle Silas, which we love. Love when someone shows up or there is someone who is just like something is off. That's definitely the case with this man. The back says it all. Death prowls the 400-odd pages of this book in Maud Ruthin, her father Austin, the grotesque Madame de la Rougière, and the shadowy suspicion that surrounds Uncle Silas in the chilly atmosphere at Knoll, and the even more haunting terror pervading Bartram Haugh, in the gloomy night thoughts and somber reflections about death that occur and reoccur. With consummate skill, Le Fanu has truly captured the secret fears and dreads that grip us all. What is up with Uncle Silas? What is up with Unc? Very excited to read this. I've had this for a while. I don't love this copy. It's very large, it's got a shiny cover. The text is weird. When I ordered this online, I thought I was getting like a Penguin Black Spine edition, which has a very creepy woman on the cover. But they sent me this one. It's a Dover edition, which is fine. It's fine, but I was like, I don't like this one as much. But this is very gothic, very creepy. Apparently kind of sensationalist, and I love a Victorian sensationalist novel. It's always like, it's not like the creme de la creme quality of writing for the Victorians at the time, but it's just meant to intrigue, it's meant to be fun, it's meant to be spooky. And I mean, in October, that's what I'm looking for. I want to be a little creeped out, and especially if it's like an old, fun, gothic thriller, I'm into that. So, Uncle Silas. This should be fun. And then one last one. This was a gift from Steve's mother. She read it for a book club, and then she's been like pressing me to read it. And I have actually, since hearing all of the feedback on this and like hearing how much people love this book, I really want to get to it. It's Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This, I'm late to the game. I know, I'm late to the game. Everybody and their mother, literally my boyfriend's mother, have read this book and people love it. However, I am so slow when it comes to getting to new releases. I sometimes like to just sit and wait and see how it pans out and see if I can read excerpts from it, or I get people's trusted opinions about it, and that's how I kind of delve in. I'm very slow when it comes to new releases. It's just the way I am. But I heard so many people talking about this for so long that I'm like, yeah, I do want to read this. And then Steve's mother got it for me, which was so nice. So I've been meaning to read this so I can talk about it with her. This is basically what it is. It's Mexican Gothic. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin, Noemi Tobada heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside, unsure what she will find. Noemi is an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, more suited to cocktail parties and amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough, smart, and not afraid. Not of her cousin's new English husband, a stranger who is both menacing and alluring. Not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems fascinated by Noemi. And not even of the house itself, which begins to evade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Noemi's only ally in this inhospitable place is the family's youngest son, but he too may be hiding something dark. For there are many secrets behind the walls of High Place, as Noemi discovers when she begins to unearth stories of violence and madness. Mesmerized by this terrifying yet seductive world, Noemi may soon find it impossible to save her cousin, or even escape this enigmatic house. Yes! That is, all the Gothic elements are there. Weird family secrets, weird creepy house, heroine who's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. Love. We love a Gothic. We love a good time. And this is in the 50s in Mexico. I just think that that's a really cool setting and not one that I really ever read from. So I'm really excited to read this. I think this will be a really fun time. So I'm going to read this in October. Yeah, those are the books that I'm thinking for fall. They might not make any sense to you. You might be like, I don't get why those are fall books, but to me they give fall. They give very fall, and I'm so excited. I got my pumpkin spice candles. I'm gonna just sit inside and hear the wind going outside and read my little spooky books and go to my little spooky sleepovers, and it's just gonna be a great time. Maybe I'll vlog the sleepover. That'd be really fun. But I'm so excited. I'm excited to do more fall content as well. I want to do more vlogs. But let me know what you think about these books. Have you read any of these books? What are you planning to read for fall? Please let me know what you plan to read for fall, because again, I tend to read more in the fall, so I might be able to squeeze in a couple more books. So if you let me know what you're reading, maybe I will read along. Thank you so much. Like this video, comment, subscribe, share it, do what you want to do, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Happy fall.